Fantastic. Sorry about that. Hi, everyone. It's February 17th. Reza here from Toronto, licensed immigration consultant. And we've got Laura from Colombia. How are you, Laura?
I'm good, Reza. How are you today?
Good, 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 good. We're live here on Facebook and YouTube. We're going to talk about postgraduate work permits. We don't want to waste too much time today. Let's get to it. People want to know how to apply for postgraduate work permit from outside of Canada. If you're looking for inside of Canada, that'll be a different video. But you're outside of Canada, you've studied in Canada or remotely during COVID, and we're going to cover that. So let's get started. Laura, what do you need to know about postgraduate work permits?
Well, yeah, I actually have a question about the PGWP because during the COVID, many international students have been studying remotely from outside Canada or going back to their home country after graduation or both. So it is possible to apply for PGWP from outside of Canada?
Yes, 100%.
So what should they do?
What forms they should fill out and
Well,
documents?
that's perfect. So let's jump into it real quick and show you how to fill out the forms. There's two main forms that you typically fill out in normal circumstances, and you have to meet some eligibility criteria. So for people who are watching and just want to know how to fill out the forms, we're going to jump into that quickly, and then at the end, we'll cover a few basic eligibility criteria as well. Okay? So let's get to it, Laura, right? Ready?
Yeah, ready.
Okay. First form, the basics. Your application for a work permit made outside of Canada. So remember, you're inside of Canada. This is not the form. This is for students who've graduated, who are eligible, who are applying from outside of Canada. So you're going to put your unique client identification number. It's usually a 10-digit number. Okay, we're just making up numbers here because we don't want our clients' information. If you don't have a UCI, you don't put it in. But if you've studied in Canada, you have a study permit approved, you will have a UCI. You can find it on your visa, the sticker in your passport. If you don't have a sticker, then you can find it on your study permit in the top right corner. You pick if you want service in English or French. If you're a French speaker, you prefer French. If you're not a French speaker, most people pick English. You put your name. So family name. So what's my name? My name is Reza Motalapur, right? My family name. My first name is Reza. Do you have other given names, right? So this is, Laura, like a nickname, but it should be documented, not like your friends call you Bob instead of Bobby. It's more like a documented nickname or alias somewhere that it's been documented. You can put that in. If you say no, you don't need to fill that in. So Laura, while I'm filling this out, you can just kind of explain to our Spanish viewers what we just did in this section.
Ok, hola a todas las personas de habla hispana. Ahorita estamos llenando y diligenciando el formulario de PGWP para todas las personas que se encuentran fuera de Canadá y se hayan graduado ya de un college, porque pues durante esta pandemia hay varias personas que han estado estudiando fuera de Canadá, lejos de Canadá, o han tenido que volver a su país luego de graduarse de un college. Entonces estamos llenando ese formulario que es exclusivamente para las personas que no están dentro de Canadá.
Perfect. So you put in your gender here, your male, female, or non-gender. You put your birthday. That's my fake birthday. And I was born in Colombia, right, Laura?
Right.
Yeah. Let's see. Where's Colombia here? So you just put your real details based on your passport. What is your citizenship, right? So I am a Canadian, but we'll just say I'm a Colombian for today. Basic stuff, right? Colombia. And then you will put your country of residence. So your current country of residence. If you are applying from outside of Canada, you will not put Canada here. You will put the country, whether it's Mexico, India, right? So maybe I'm in India today, right? And I'm applying from there, your current country where you're residing, okay? Not where you're visiting, okay? You're residing, okay? What's my status there? Maybe I'm a citizen, maybe I'm a permanent resident, maybe I'm a worker, right? So current country of Where am I residing? Typically, you're not going to be in Canada for this case because we're talking about outside of Canada postgraduate work permit applications. So maybe you can do that real quick, Laura, in Spanish, and then we continue in the form.
Yeah, okay. Ya luego con este formulario, pues lo primero que diligenciamos es el nombre y el código que uno le da cuando uno tiene lo de la visa de turismo, la visa de estudios. Y ya después lo que es el género, la fecha de nacimiento, el lugar de nacimiento, la ciudadanía, el lugar donde se encuentra en este momento residiendo. Como esta aplicación es fuera de Canadá, entonces ya saben que ninguna de estas opciones pues debería ser Canadá, porque nos encontramos fuera y pues es un formulario específicamente para las personas que no están dentro de Canadá.
Perfect. I just want to say I have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, perfect. So here, the next part is, where have you previously resided besides the country that you're in now during the past 5 years, other than the country of your citizenship or your current country? So you should put Canada, right? Because you were in Canada probably, and you were a student most likely. So you have to put Canada student. If not, then if your situation is different, make sure you be careful with that. So that's where I studied. I was a student. I was in Canada from this time to this time, right? And then, if there was any other countries that in the last 5 years you've resided in, not visiting, resided. So you actually have like a work permit or a permanent residency or a student visa or something a little bit more permanent than a tourist visa. And where are you applying from? So I mentioned that I'm in, where am I? In India. I'm a permanent resident of India and I'm applying, right? That's my current country of residence. Are you applying, right? Country where you're applying from, if it's different. But I'm saying no, I'm already in India, right? Same as current country, I'll say yes, right? So you don't need to fill it out. But let's say you're a resident of India and you studied in Canada, but you're applying from UAE in Dubai. Then you would put there as that. But you have to have very specific reasons why you're not applying from your current country of residence, right? So in this case, we put, yes, it's the same residential country as my residency, which is India, right? Makes sense, Laura?
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, and if you put no, it's a different country, then you have to say what your status there is and from when to when you're actually there, where you're applying, right? And then I talk about marriage, and if you're single, you put single. If you're divorced, common law, annulled marriage, legally separated, unknown. I mean, in very rare cases, you put that, or widowed, right? So right now, I believe I am married. If you're married in a common law, provide the date of marriage, right? So when did I get married? Maybe I got married in the year 2000, 0102, right? What's the name? I think my name is, my wife's name is Ivanka Trump, right? Maybe. So Laura, you want to explain about this residency? So current country of residency, where you're applying from. Sure. The fact that most likely they were students, so they have to mention these things. And whether they're in a different country than these two, and that's the question here. They may have to fill it out, they may not, depending on their situation, right?
Okay. Para las personas de habla hispana, ya en el punto 7 habíamos dicho que en donde nos encontramos viviendo actualmente, entonces en este caso nosotros que pusimos India, a pesar de que seamos de Colombia, y que el estatus que tenemos es de residente permanente. Entonces ya el punto 8 tenemos que poner los países en donde hemos estado residiendo anteriormente, y pues si estudió en Canadá y luego salió del país y pues planea aplicar el PGWP fuera de Canadá, entonces ahí se pondría entre los territorios Canadá, o en otros casos pues se pondría ya otros territorios. Y ya luego en el punto 9, si yo me encuentro en India, que es en donde estoy residiendo en este momento, pero voy a aplicar en otro país, ya sea México, Perú, entonces ahí sí tendríamos que poner que no es el mismo país en el que vamos a aplicar el territorio de residencia con el territorio en donde estamos aplicando, y llenamos la información. En caso de que sí sea el mismo país, entonces ponemos que sí, y entonces no toca llenar ninguna información adicional. Y ya más abajo es lo del estatus en que nos encontramos ahorita, si casados, solteros, y la fecha en caso de que seamos casados o algo por el estilo. Y ya abajo pues el nombre de la pareja.
Yeah, maybe I'll put divorced. No? Yeah, I'll put married. Yeah, so you put marriage, you put your date, again, just repeating. I guess it was Ivanka Trump that was married to. So you mentioned that part, right? Laura, you covered that? Yeah, and if you were single, you were single. Well, I just put single here. There's no information that you need to fill out here. Then you'll see that your name and your date of birth automatically auto-populates here. Your personal identification details, right? So if there's some information about your previous marriage or common law. So if you were never married or not in a previous marriage or common law relationship, you say no, you don't need to fill this out. But let's say you were separated or divorced, or there was a previous marriage, maybe you were widowed or whatnot, you do have to give that information, right? Like, what was the marriage, from when to when, right? If you were in more than one relationship, that's been documented. Otherwise, you say, no, I haven't been. What is your native language? So is it Hindi? Is it Spanish, right? So because I was born in Colombia, I will say, I wasn't really born in Colombia, by the way, folks. Spanish, right? And I just put Spanish here. These are a lot of languages. Where is Spanish? There you go. And then, are you able to communicate in English or French, right? So if you're not, then in a lot of situations they may, if there's interviews involved and stuff, which in most cases it isn't, you put neither. But in most cases you put English or French, right? Or both. So I know English, so I'm just going to put that. And then if you put neither, right? That's a different situation. If you put both, it'll ask you, which one do you prefer, English or French? Well, I'll say English, right? But at the beginning, I think it's just easier just to pick the main language, whichever it is. Have you taken a test, like a language test, like an IELTS, a TOEFL, or a TCF, or TEF for French, right? And you just mentioned no or yes. This is not mandatory for PGWP. It's just information, right? So I haven't taken it, but it doesn't mean that I'm not eligible for PGW. This is just a standard question on the form. So it's either yes or no. So Laura, why don't you cover this part as well while I move on here?
Yeah, sure. Luego de diligenciar esa información que había dicho antes, vamos a poner los detalles personales en caso de que hayamos tenido algún matrimonio o algo por el estilo antes, pues diligenciamos que sí y llenamos la información, pero en caso de que no, pues decimos que no. Luego en los idiomas, pues el idioma nativo, en este caso pues es español, y ya luego de eso, si nos podemos comunicar en inglés, francés, ambos o ninguno. Entonces pues aquí prácticamente inglés es como el más común, así que se pondría inglés, y abajo sale algo de si hemos tomado algún test, esos tests sobre el TOEFL o el IELTS o algún test internacional, que evalúe como la habilidad que tiene en inglés o en otro idioma, y no es obligatorio. Entonces, si no tienen ese test, pueden dar perfectamente no y no hay ningún problema.
Perfect. So you'll put in your passport details. You need a passport. It should be valid. Otherwise, you cannot get a postgraduate work permit. You put your passport number, the country which was issued, the issue, and expired. Pretty simple, right? And then it won't get you eligible for these questions, because these are not related to Taiwan and Israel if I was born in Colombia. If the passport is from a specific country relating to these two questions, you can answer them. But in 90% of cases, if you're not from these countries, they won't ask you that question. You don't need to fill that out. National identity card. So in Colombia, you do. In my country, you do. So you put yes, you fill it out, right? But if you put no, you don't need to fill it out. Right? If you don't have one, if you have one from your country and they issue it, you should put it in, right? Laura, you basically, in Colombia, for example, you do have these. So I'm going to put Colombia here, right? But if your country does not issue it, you put no. What's the issue date? Do you have issue dates in Colombia, or I think no, right?
We have issue date, but expiry date, no.
Yeah, so it was issued, let's say, in, I don't know, 2004, 05, 05, whatever. There's no expiry, so I'm not going to put it in there, okay? USPR card? No, I don't have a USPR card. If you do, you put it in there, right? Do you want to cover that part quickly, Laura, and then I'll
Yeah, I
just
can
get
do it
into the
fast.
contact information? Yeah.
Ya. Luego, la información que tendríamos que diligenciar es la del pasaporte, en donde es el número del pasaporte, el país en donde fue diligenciado, y pues ya las fechas tanto en el que se solicitó y le dieron a uno la aprobación y en cuando se expira. Y luego de eso, pues ya hay algunos países que requieren como información adicional, que es el punto 5 y 6 dentro del pasaporte, pero no es obligatorio, y o sea, pues para otros países es obligatorio, para unos no hace falta responderlos. Y ya en lo del documento de identidad es también poner la información.
Perfect. Contact information. So you've got current mailing address, right? And you've got residential. They can be the same and they can be different. Your current mailing address means if you have an address in Canada or outside, that's where you put it. That's where if you need something sent out by IRCC to you in a mail, that's where it'll go. So it'll be your address, your family's address in Canada, maybe your immigration lawyer consultant's address in Canada. But if you're outside of Canada, you can put your outside of Canada. It doesn't have to be inside, right? So I'm going to put, well, I'm in some weird place in, I don't know where. Maybe I'm in some weird street, Bogota. And we are going to pick Colombia again, right, Laura?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and province, state, postal code, district, I have no idea. So this is just a mailing address. The residential address, is it the same? Yes, then you don't need to fill that out. I mean, you can't do PO boxes here. So you say yes, so you don't need to fill it up. But if your residential address is different, so where you reside, where you live, right? This is not where IRCC will send you anything. This is where they would send you stuff. But if you're applying from outside of Canada, they're not going to actually mail you anything. So this can be the same address or it can be a different address. Hey, I'm in Colombia now, so that's maybe I have a different address for mailing. So this is not mandatory to have the same address or be inside of Canada. If you're applying from inside of Canada, of course you need a current mailing address because they mail you the physical study permit or work permit, or visitor record. But if you're outside, you just put your overseas addresses. It's fine, right? And let's say my address is the same in Colombia. I don't have a separate mailing address and a different address where I live in, right? So Laura, why don't you explain that in Spanish, and then I'll just put this stuff out there as well.
Okay. Luego va la información de contacto. En esto hay dos direcciones que se tienen que tener en cuenta. Una es la dirección en donde queremos que nos llegue el correo. Esta dirección puede ser exactamente la misma en donde nos encontramos viviendo en este momento. Entonces, si estamos viviendo en Colombia, Bogotá, y nos gustaría que nos llegara el correo a esa dirección, entonces pues pondríamos esa dirección en current mailing address y adicionalmente la pondríamos en residential address. Igualmente, aquí no es tan obligatorio lo del mailing, aunque sí toca diligenciarlo porque no estamos dentro de Canadá, entonces probablemente si estemos fuera no nos va a llegar esa correspondencia.
Yeah, perfect. So then we put in your phone number overseas. Maybe you also have some family or friends, or maybe a Canadian number, who knows. You put that, not mandatory, alternative phone number, right? We go on. And we've got fax number. You don't have one, you just can leave it. The email address is probably the most important. That's how they're going to communicate with you. If you don't put an email address, then it's going to be mail, right? It won't be good. Or through your GCK account or online account, portal. If you put an email address, they can communicate with you on that email address. So whether it's your email address or your legal representative, okay? So I will put it at info@ingwe.ca, okay? Details of intended work in Canada, right? So this is an important part. So let's just cover the phone number stuff in Spanish, Laura, and then I'll cover this section about the kind of work permit that they need to apply for using this form.
Okay, sure. Luego vamos a hablar y a poner la información del número telefónico donde queremos que nos contacten cualquier cosa, y una de las partes más importantes, de las secciones más importantes, es el correo electrónico, porque a ese correo es donde nos va a llegar la información, y si no ponemos ningún correo probablemente va a ser mucho más difícil que nos llegue esa información, porque puede ser por mail, que es pues por correo normal, o por medio de la misma plataforma. Entonces, si se pone correo electrónico, es muchísimo más fácil esa comunicación.
Perfect, perfect. That is perfect. So let's figure it out, folks. What kind of work permit are you applying for? This is very important, right? You apply for an open work permit. So you're applying for a postgraduate work permit. You're applying for an open work permit. You do not need to fill this information out. This section you don't fill out. This section you don't fill out. This section you don't fill out either. My occupation in Canada, intended location of employment, complete address of employer, details of your prospective employer. None of this. My occupation in Canada will be your job title. No, zero. You don't fill this out. Duration of your expected employment. For a postgraduate work permit, you do not fill this stuff out. Okay? So nothing. So for section 5432, nothing. You just pick open work permit, Laura, right?
Right.
So we pick that and then we move on to the education section. So let's cover that in Spanish and then we'll move on here.
Sure. Luego va la sección de... Can you go up?
Yeah, sorry.
Luego vamos a la sección de detalles de la intención de trabajar en Canadá y lo único que vamos a tener que diligenciar en esta parte es que vamos a aplicar a un permiso de trabajo abierto. Ya lo que sigue después de lo del empleador, de la dirección, de las funciones, de la ocupación, todo eso se deja en blanco y solamente se pone en esa aplicación el Open Work Permit.
Okay, so we're gonna do education now, right? What is the highest level of a completed post-secondary institution? Okay, so I'm gonna say I graduated, right? Not my Canadian one, because maybe that's not my highest education. Maybe it was back in India. Maybe it was in the US, right? So I went to Trump School, Trump University. That's where I got my master's, right, Laura?
Right.
Yeah, so USA, United States. I paid a lot of money for Trump University. Where is that? United States of America, right? I probably went to, I don't know, maybe it was in Miami, right? Province, it was in Florida, of course, right? So if your highest education was in Canada, you put your Canadian details, right? Maybe it was Centennial College, maybe it was Langara College, maybe it was Seneca, maybe it was George Brown, right? Maybe it was, the New Brunswick College. So you do have education, so you put it in there. If you don't, then that's an issue, because how did you graduate for an eligible, to become eligible for a postgraduate work permit? So you put yes, have you had post-secondary? You put in the details of your highest degree, whether it's inside Canada, your highest degree, or outside. If you did a bachelor's home and you did a postgraduate certificate in Canada, the postgraduate certificate will be your highest. If you have a bachelor's from home and you did a college 2-year diploma in Canada, then your bachelor's from home or your something else would be the highest degree you've achieved, right? Or you've completed. That's the information you put, right?
Right.
So let's cover that and then we'll take it to the next section.
Ok, la siguiente sección que llenamos es la de educación. Aquí algo muy importante a tener en cuenta es que, bueno, primero nos está preguntando si tenemos alguna educación postsecundaria y le damos que sí, le decimos que sí. Y tenemos que diligenciar en esta sección la educación más alta que hemos tenido. No importa si es dentro de Canadá o fuera de Canadá, es la educación más alta que se ha tenido. Por ejemplo, si yo tuve un pregrado aquí en Colombia y luego conseguí y realicé un certificado o un diploma de 2 años en Canadá, pues tiene más validez y es más alto la educación de un pregrado. Si hice un pregrado aquí y una maestría, un pregrado en Colombia y una maestría en Canadá, tiene un nivel más alto de educación en la maestría en Canadá, entonces es la educación más alta.
Okay, next section, employment history. So if you're unemployed or employed or maybe studying and working at the same time for the past 10 years, you put this information here, right? So I graduated in January, so for a month I haven't done anything, so I'll put that. That is an A. I was on vacation after that, so I'm not kind of unemployed, but I don't like to use the word unemployed, right? So maybe I am in Bogota because that's where I'm applying. That's where I was. Now maybe I'm in India. Who knows? Colombia, right? Let's see, Colombia. Should have picked a country with that started with A. Would have been easier, right? No province. So then I go and you put this in consecutive order, Laura. And what will happen is, okay, I studied maybe from 2018, I don't know, 09 to 2020, 01. What was I doing? We'd like to make it consecutive, like, you know, like a, you know, the dates should match, right? So I was, you know, full-time student maybe, or working part-time, I don't know, something like that. That's what you can put in, right? So you can put, I don't know, where did I study? I studied at maybe I studied at BCIT in Vancouver, right? And that was Vancouver, that's where I studied, and that was in Canada, right? You can, some people ask me, can you put every place you've worked part-time? You could. It will become a little bit more complicated, but yeah, you could put in a separate sheet, put a whole table. I worked in 10 different places, what I studied. I like to generalize, especially for a postgraduate work permit, because it's not, they're not giving you points for anything at this point, right? And then, you know, maybe back home I was, you know, so you start from the most recent and then you go to the older ones, and then let's say, you know, 2000, I don't know, 2016, 04 to 2018, 09, I was, I don't know, who knows, maybe I was a clown at a circus, right? What do you think, Laura?
Possible. Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, maybe I was a clown at a circus. City Toronto, I have no clue. Where was I working? Maybe I was in Dallas. Dallas, United States of America. Gotta love it. Where was that? That's in Texas, folks. Texas. So it's gotta start from the newest, Laura, go to the oldest, right? And if there was gaps, you fill those too, right? Like, okay, I was unemployed, because that is potentially, that's, you know, they want to see the gaps as well, right? So I put it in consecutive. Maybe I was studying and working. Maybe I was just studying. I'll still put it there because I want to make sure that IRCC has my history. This is the only section of this form that asks you your history. So I'm kind of combining everything in here, and just make sure it's consecutive. There's not a lot of big gaps, and it starts from newest and goes to oldest. If you don't have room, you include a separate piece of paper. You can put in the page, the question number, and then in the same format, create a table and fill out the rest. If you have way more history than just these three that I've mentioned on this form right now. Okay, so let's cover that in Spanish and then we'll move forward, Laura.
Ok, luego vamos para la sección de empleo. Aquí tenemos que incluir detalles de lo que hemos hecho durante los últimos 10 años. Entonces se pone el orden desde el más nuevo hasta el más antiguo, dentro de esos últimos 10 años. Y si durante un tiempo estuvo trabajando y luego estuvo desempleado y estuvo un tiempo estudiando, entonces se pone esa información. Por ejemplo, aquí el primer punto, la primera parte, que fue en 2022, pusimos que estábamos de vacaciones durante ese tiempo. Antes de eso, para no dejar ninguna brecha, que nos encontrábamos estudiando, también se podría diligenciar que nos encontrábamos estudiando y trabajando a tiempo parcial, y luego pondríamos otra experiencia. Entonces ya saben, la experiencia más nueva, la más reciente, hasta la más antigua. Y en caso de que tengan más, porque acá solamente hay 3 campos para diligenciar, en caso de que tengan más información pueden ponerla en un cuadrito ya más organizado y añaden más información ahí y la juntan.
Perfect. Thanks, Laura. So the next page, which is one of the last pages where you'll actually fill out any proper information, is the background information. So we'll go one by one, Laura. So I'll read the line and then you kind of paraphrase. So it's regarding, you know, you or your family having had tuberculosis of the lungs or in close contact with somebody. If you put yes, you need to put the information here, a little bit of a background. If you put no, then you don't need to really put anything. So Laura, we'll do one by one so it doesn't get too long, right? So go ahead.
Sure. Okay. Aquí es como la información que hemos tenido en el pasado. Entonces, en la primera pregunta nos están diciendo si hemos tenido contacto cercano o hemos tenido tuberculosis. Si la respuesta es no, se pone no. Si la respuesta es sí, tendríamos que explicarle las razones, una breve descripción de por qué es sí.
Perfect. And then it's asking whether you have any physical or mental disorder. And remember, folks, these will not discriminate against you, right? Like if you do or don't. If it's not like a severe case. If it's a slight, if there's certain issues, they will note it down. But if you do have any issues here, it's asking you, do you have any mental disorder or physical would require social or health services? So if it's not serious, that serious where you'll need special medication or anything, you put no. So you don't need to write it. If you do, it says yes. And then what will happen is IRCC will check with you what exactly the situation is. They may ask you for more questions if you write stuff down, if you say yes, okay? So that's this part about your background. We'll go into number 2. Laura, you can cover that as well.
Otra pregunta en la primera parte del background es acerca de si tenemos algún desorden, ya sea mental o físico, que requiera servicios de salud. Si la respuesta es no, lo mismo se pone no. Si la respuesta es sí, daríamos una breve descripción, pero ya estos son en casos como extremos, en donde necesitáramos ya de ayuda o de atención médica.
Okay, next section is very important, folks, so pay attention. Have you previously stayed in Canada, been out of status, stayed beyond the validity of your visa, work permit, or study permit, or worked without authorization, permission? So if you did, then that'll be an issue. Okay, so you gotta be careful. If you say yes, you have to explain it, and probably you need some professional advice on how to handle that. If not, okay, you were never inside of Canada, staying without a visa, or you've overstayed, or you worked illegally, then you put no, okay? And then the next question is, have you ever been refused a visa or denied entry? Okay, this is very important. To Canada or any other country. So if you've applied for any other country's visa, you were denied, you have to put yes, right? If you were previously denied to Canada, you will put yes. If you had a visa, you went to India or US or Colombia, and at the border, they denied you entry, even though you had a valid visa, you have to put yes, and you have to explain it. Okay, so Laura, why don't you cover those two, and then I'll just write some stuff here, and then we'll explain this further to our audience.
Okay, sure. Para la segunda sección de información ya de uno del pasado, nos encontramos con estas preguntas. La primera es si hemos permanecido dentro de Canadá sin un estatus legal, o sea, hemos permanecido sin autorización, y si la respuesta es sí, va a ser un poco más problemático hacer este proceso. Entonces en esos casos sí es necesario tener como ayuda de un profesional. Y si la respuesta es no, pues no hay ningún problema. Ya después la otra pregunta es si se ha negado, le han rechazado la visa o la entrada a Canadá. Aquí tendríamos que dar una breve descripción. Y lo mismo en si anteriormente hemos aplicado para permanecer o entrar a Canadá.
Okay, see what I'm writing here, Laura? It's about B. So for section B, I said yes. So I put B and was refused. Okay, on, I don't know, who knows, December 2020. Okay, so every single refusal, no matter what country or previously for Canada before you were approved, you put it in there. And then C, have you previously applied to enter or remain in Canada? If you put no, that means you're lying, because how can you be an international student and never applied? So you're not even eligible for postgraduate work. So you put yes, right? And then you put C, I applied for a study permit. Okay, sorry about the abbreviations, just write study permit, don't put SP. Apply for a study permit in, I don't know, what is it, like November 2020, and was approved, right? Approved, because there's a limitation on text, Laura, so you can't put a whole paragraph here unless you want to really explain. Again, you can put you can put see attached. Okay, so let me cut that. See attached explanation, right? You can put that. But if it's not law, you can paraphrase here. You have to put, hey, I applied for a study permit or a visitor visa, right? And to come to Canada, right? Because you're an international student. How can you be eligible if you didn't? And then here, if you don't have refusals, you say no. But if you do have refusals, no matter which country, no matter if you were refused, then approved, you have to put yes. And then you quickly write very short form what happened. And if you don't do it correctly here, you will be hit with misrepresentation and possible refusal and possible ban. So be careful, Laura. This is a very important section.
Okay.
Yeah.
Todavía estamos hablando de la segunda parte y es que en explicar el por qué, por ejemplo, en la parte B, recibimos el rechazo o se nos negó la entrada a Canadá o salir de Canadá. Es muy importante explicar las razones, ser muy claro, porque en caso de no decir la verdad o no ser muy claro, puede ya darle problemas para la aplicación, para el futuro. Entonces es mejor decir siempre la verdad, porque si se oculta alguna información puede que ya Canadá lo sepa, entonces es mejor evitar ese tipo de situaciones. Y en el C ya es si se ha aplicado previamente, entonces la respuesta acá también sería sí, porque se supone que estamos aplicando el PGWP, entonces ya fuimos estudiantes internacionales, así que anteriormente tuvimos que haber aplicado el permiso de estudio, así que en este caso iría así. Algo importante también que se tiene que tener en cuenta es que si anteriormente recibí un rechazo, ya sea de cualquier país, de cualquier lugar, y después me dieron la aprobación, igualmente se tiene que mencionar ese rechazo que se recibió antes. Y en caso también de que tengan bastante información, porque aquí solamente hay como un limitado número de caracteres en los que pueden escribir, si ya se tiene bastante información para explicar, entonces podría en ese cuadrito decir que van a juntar algún documento y ya se extienden en ese documento.
Perfect. Thanks, Laura. So the next question is, have you ever committed or been arrested and been charged or convicted for a criminal offense in any country or region, right? So if you do yes, you need to write the details and probably provide supporting documentation, okay? If you prefer no, then you don't need to fill it out. And the next question after that is military service or civil defense in any security organization or police force or military, right? That is including non-obligatory reserves or volunteer units. So if you were in the military, police force, or some security agency, then you should put yes and explain, and probably will need some more documentation. But if you haven't, then you just put no. If you had mandatory military service, you just put it here, right? You just mention from what date to what date, which division, which branch. You know, was it infantry, was it Air Force, what your role was, and the whole dates. Otherwise, I've never been to the military, so no for us. Okay, so Laura, cover those two and then we'll move on.
Ok. Las otras secciones, ya la número 3 y la 4, la 3 está preguntando si anteriormente he sido arrestado o he cometido alguna ofensa criminal en algún territorio o país. Entonces, si la respuesta es sí, se da una breve explicación, y si la respuesta es no, pues no hay ningún problema, se deja eso en blanco y ya. Y ya en el otro punto es si se ha servido a alguna milicia, defensa civil o alguna organización de seguridad o policía, y aquí es lo mismo. Si la respuesta es no, no pasa nada, no se diligencia esta información de los detalles, y si la respuesta es sí, pues se diligenciarían los detalles de, supongamos, si es en la milicia o la parte militar, entonces si estuve en la Fuerza Aérea, en la Marina o en algún aspecto de estos, entonces ya se daría más detalles.
Perfect, thanks Laura. And then the last two questions, have you ever been associated with a party, organization, group, whatever, that has been, you know, acts of violence, right? Or criminal activity. So if you're part of the mafia, you know, this is where you say yes. If you were in a gang or some political group which was killing people or harassing people, that you'll put yes. Otherwise, like me and Laura, you will put no, right, Laura?
Right.
Yeah, so why didn't you explain that to our colleagues in Spanish, and then we'll go to the next question.
Sure. Ya la última pregunta sería si hemos estado participando en la mafia o en algunas cosas así ya fuera del lugar. Si la respuesta es sí, pues tendrían que poner los detalles, pero normalmente la respuesta suele ser no, entonces esto también se dejaría en blanco.
Yeah, and then the next question is, have you ever participated or witnessed like ill treatment of prisoners or civilians, like torture or hurting people? If you participated in that, or you watched it, right? So if, let's say, you were in the CIA and you were torturing people, or you watched your colleague torture people, you put yes, and then you should explain why. But no, unfortunately, fortunately, me and Laura were not in the CIA or in some military torturing people or harassing or burning villages, so we will put no. Okay, so
Okay.
mention that and then we'll move on. Laura.
Okay. Ya entre la última pregunta también es si alguna vez hemos presenciado o hemos sido partícipes de alguna tortura que se ha ejercido o algo por el estilo. Entonces esto ya es, si supongamos alguien pertenece a la CIA y pues ha tenido que evidenciar esto, participar en esto, entonces se pondría así y se explicaría las razones. En caso de que no, que también es como lo más común que la respuesta sea no, pues se deja en no y ya se deja lo demás en blanco.
Perfect, thanks Laura. I'm just checking if there's anything here that I need to be careful with. Okay, so yeah, so just put B and C here. Perfect. So let's move on. Then we're in the last section. This is authorization for IRCC or the Canadian government to contact you. It's not related to your application per se. It's more for informational purposes, statistics, these sort of things. If you put no or yes, it really doesn't matter. It will not affect your application anyway. So I'm going to put no. Most people think they need to be very nice and say yes to everything, but no, you don't need to do that. So you can say no. Okay. Well, reserve priority. Yeah. So do you request in the future? In the future, yeah, I would just say no. You can put yes. A lot of people put yes. And then this is where you sign, right? Hopefully you're over the age of 18. Otherwise, your parents or guardian should. And you date it. If you're doing an online application, because remember, the only time you're doing a postgraduate work permit paper application is if you are extending your postgraduate work permit because your passport expired. But other than that, your digital signature will be included in your portal. You don't need to do anything. All you do is validate, right? So Laura, why don't you cover this and then I'll click the validation button.
Ya, ok. Ya vendría siendo la última página, la página número 5, en donde lo que nos sale ahí una pregunta de si queremos que IRCC nos contacte, que tengan nuestra información. Y aquí no importa si se pone no o si la mayoría de personas ponen sí, pero pues ya es decisión de cada persona. Y al finalizar se diligencia la firma del aplicante y la fecha en donde se está realizando esta aplicación. Y ya entonces se vendría haciendo este formulario.
Perfect. So you've got your validation. I just clicked validate. It validated. If there was a problem, right? So I'm going to make a intentional mistake somewhere. I don't know. Like that. I'm going to put a equal sign, right? Maybe I will put, I don't know, C here. Maybe I won't put my first name. Maybe I forget, right? When you press validate, it will take you and tell you these are the issues that are wrong, right? And then you can fix them, right? But remember, you need to validate. So it tells you all the mistakes you've made on the form, right? It takes you there, right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1970, and yeah, I got a name, first name Reza. Yeah, that's my name, first name Reza. Okay, sounds good. So I'm gonna validate again. When you validate, that's when you upload. Okay, Laura?
Okay.
And you will see the validation page after it's successfully validated here, and that's where the immigration computers online will read it, and all your information is in here. That's where the computer is taking your information from. Okay, so let's cover that and then jump into the next form quickly.
Sure.
Sure. Ya al tener toda la información diligenciada, uno le da en validar y si está correcta, va a decir que la validación ha sido exitosa y ya la aplicación quedaría como se nos muestra ahí en pantalla. En caso de que haya alguna información incorrecta, ya sea que la fecha de nacimiento fue diligenciada de forma incorrecta o el nombre o algo por el estilo, entonces ahí nos avisan de que esta información está incompleta y toca realizar las correcciones. Pero si está bien, nos sale que la validación ha sido completamente exitosa.
Perfect. Thanks, Laura. So we will go into the next form. We'll cover that one quite quickly. We'll just explain it, Laura, real quick. So we will go into the schedule. So you need this form as well when you're applying from outside of Canada for your postgraduate work permit, correct? Correct, Laura, right?
Correct.
Let's see, schedule one. Can you see my form online? Yeah?
Yes, I can see the
Yeah, so perfect. So here it's just basically supplementary information, right? I'm the principal applicant. If somebody's filling this out, like you're filling it out for your child or partner or spouse, you put that. But if you're the principal applicant, you put it there. Again, you put your information, same info, right? Date of birth, right? All the basic info. So you can just go along, Laura, and just mention what I'm saying right now in Spanish as well. So this is the additional form you have to fill out from outside of, do you hear me, Laura? Laura, do you hear me?
Yeah, no, I can hear you.
Yeah. So this is just the additional form that you have to fill out. We won't go into too much detail about it. It's supplementary information. Name, UCI number, birth date. It asks about your military service, right? If you've had military service, you put in the details here. If no, you don't need to fill the details. If you watch people get tortured or whatever bad things, you put yes. Okay. Otherwise, you put no. Memberships of associations, right? That are in violence. They're violent. They're criminal. They hurt people. You put yes, and you put the details. Otherwise, you put no. And then if you had government positions, so if you were in government, right? No matter what, maybe you were an officer or somewhere. Who knows? Hospital administrator, anything that is government owned, and you had a position, you put it here, right? This is not bad. They're not going to penalize you for that. So yeah, maybe I had a government position in 1990, right? Sorry, not 1000. So you can mention it in Spanish, Laura, and then we'll continue.
Yeah, okay? Sure. Este es otro formulario que vamos a tener que diligenciar. Es un formulario, también voy a explicarles brevemente, es muy similar al otro. Aquí en la primera parte ponemos nuestro nombre, luego la fecha de nacimiento, el mismo código UCI, que es el que sale en la visa o en el permiso de estudio. Más abajo también se añade la información si se ha prestado servicio militar. Si sí, se explica, si es no, pues se deja en blanco, o sea, se pone no y no nada más. También lo mismo si hemos sido testigos de alguien que ha estado en contra de edificios religiosos o algo por el estilo, respondemos lo mismo. Si se ha prestado servicio civil, servicio militar, también se respondería exactamente lo mismo. Si se hacen los detalles, si no, solamente se diligencia el no. Y si hemos estado en alguna posición de un gobierno, ya sea que estemos trabajando en el gobierno, no hay problema si la respuesta es sí o si la respuesta es no, y ahí pues simplemente también se diligencia la información.
Perfect, thanks Laura. So the next section, okay, you didn't work for government, you did, you put your history. This part is your travel history, right? Either since the age of 18 or for the last 5 years. So no matter where you've traveled, tourist, visitor visa, study permit, work permit, no matter what, permanent residencies, this is your travel history, okay? It's not your residential history, it's your travel. Any country you've traveled into, right? You will mention here. Other than your country of citizenship or your current country. So if you're in Canada, for example, you're not going to put Canada, your Canadian trips. right? You're going to put any other country. But if you're not in Canada filling this postgraduate work permit application, then you will put your Canadian trips here, your tourism, let's say to Europe, or you were to Mexico or in Colombia, India, Dubai, no matter where, Tel Aviv, who knows where you were. You will put the dates, the month, years, what country you visited, right? Maybe I visited India again, not India because I'm a resident, so maybe I was in Haiti. Maybe I was in Honduras, right? Which city? I have no clue. I don't know. Don't put that, but put the city. Purpose of travel, tourism, right? Or maybe it was studying, or maybe, I don't know, work, right, Laura? So you can put all these things here,
Right.
but you have to put it consecutively, your most recent to the oldest. And if you need more space, you press the plus button. So if you traveled in the last 5 years, or since you were 18, whichever is, so if you're 20, you go up to 18. But if you're 40 years old, you don't go up to your age of 18. You just do the 5 years. So you can put all your travel history, right? From when to when, right? So it's not where you live, you're a resident. It's not your citizenship, right? If you're outside of Canada, you will include Canada and any other travel, no matter if it's tourism, work, studying, visiting, anything, right? If you visit a conference, even if there's a stamp or no stamp and you actually went into a country even for a day and came out, that's where you'll put it in. Right, Laura?
Right.
Okay, so yes, I have travel history, so I put yes, right? So just mention that to everyone and we'll take it from there.
Ok, ya la última sección de este otro documento son el historial de viajes, entonces hay dos opciones. Una es el historial de viajes dentro de los últimos 10 años o hasta que lleguemos a la edad de 18, por ejemplo, si tenemos 20 años, no vamos a estar los últimos 10 años, sino hasta la edad de 18 años, y si tenemos 30 años, pues serían así los últimos 10 años. Y aquí no se ponen donde me encuentro en este momento, sino el historial de viajes. Por ejemplo, si me encuentro en Colombia y yo viajé a Canadá y después volví, entonces diligenciaría y pondría esa información de que viajé a Canadá, la fecha, qué lugar fui, el propósito de viaje. Entonces eso es prácticamente la información que se pone en esta sección.
Perfect. Thanks, Laura. So the most important part of this is if you're inside of Canada applying for postgraduate work, remember you're watching the wrong video. If you are, then you don't put the Canadian trips in here. But if you're outside of Canada and you're applying for postgraduate work, you do include your Canadian trips, whether to study, visit, whatever, and any other trips that are not your country of residence or your citizenship, which means the passport that you're holding. Okay, and then you press validate and it's done. If it's not correct, it will tell you right here which field is incorrect, right, Laura? And then the last page, you won't see you won't see a validation page like the other form, and you will include this in your postgraduate work permit application for outside of Canada. Okay? So let's cover that, Laura. Just recap and then we'll finish off there.
Okay.
Algo importante para las personas aquí de habla hispana es que estos formularios se aplican, son para los que se encuentran fuera de Canadá. Si estás dentro de Canadá y vas a aplicar el PGWP, probablemente estés viendo el video equivocado, pero si estás fuera y quieres aplicar el PGWP, si es el video que vas a necesitar, estos son los formularios, y siempre cuando se termine de diligenciar un formulario hay que darle clic en validar para saber si la información está correcta o si hay algún dato o alguna información que no hemos diligenciado, y ya luego de esto tendríamos estos formularios listos.
Perfect. Thank you. So, what do we do now? Right? That's the question, right, Laura? What do we do now? So we're going to cover quickly the eligibility, very quickly, right? Boom, boom. The only things you have to consider when you want to apply for a postgraduate work permit, Laura, from outside of Canada is you should have been approved for a study permit at some point. Your study permit may have expired. That's okay. But as long as you were studying and you continued to study, or you were enrolled in a program, according to the regulations, you can find this on the IRCC website, you're fine. So you can apply from outside of Canada for postgraduate work permit, your study permit could be expired. That's okay, but it has to be within 180 days of the time that you have a confirmation of graduation. This is very important, folks. Okay? If you graduated for over a year ago, then you're not eligible. If you graduate within 6 months and your study permit had expired, you're okay too, right? So make sure you check out all these details on the IRCC website. You have any questions, you need help, of course our office is here to help you. So Laura, let's cover that and then we'll say thank you to all of our folks who are watching the video today.
Ok, ya hablando un poco de la elegibilidad, la vamos a tomar de forma rápida. En esta sección, uno de los aspectos más importantes es el tiempo. Porque si a una persona se le venció el permiso de estudio, no hay ningún problema. Pero lo que se tiene que tener en cuenta aquí en esta parte es que la persona tiene hasta 180 días para poder solicitar un PGWP, ya sea después de obtener el título o el diploma, después de graduarse, o un expediente académico o carta oficial de la escuela. Entonces ya saben, 180 días. Si Teresa se graduó y ya pasó un año y la persona quiere aplicar este PGWP, ya no va a ser elegible.
Perfect, thanks Laura. So thanks for watching everyone. That was our basically our how-to guide, right, Laura? We'll jump into that screen. And that's it. Thanks for your help. And there's a few questions out there, so we're going to quickly answer them because we're running out of time, folks. Bedrose is saying he's received some notes from his refusal, and the reason for refusal was because my father, who was financial sponsor me, had large deposits with no providence or fluctuation. It can be a valid reason, Bedrose. It can be. It could be several reasons. That could be one of them. But when there's large amounts of money, you have to prove the source of funds. You don't have to legally, but that's what they want. Osman Abubakar says, hello, my brother. How are you? Rosabella Ayalan Luna is asking a question in Spanish. What is that question?
She is asking the following. How many times can I make a study permit extension?
Until you graduate from your school, from your program, right? Or you've applied for a new program to continue your studies inside Canada, so you can apply for a study permit extension there too. And remember, you need to maintain full-time status. So if a program takes 2 years and you're taking 4 years and you took time in between off, then IRCC may not allow that renewal extension. So you can renew up to the point where you graduate, right? But if you took time off or you had big gaps, they may not renew it. So that's the answer to that question.
Okay, I'm going to answer it in Spanish. Hola Rosalba Luna, tu pregunta de muy buenos días, Reza y Laura, ¿cuántas veces puedo hacer extensión de permiso de estudio? Gracias por su respuesta. Para este caso, si la persona se encuentra, si va terminando su programa y se encuentra inscrita en otro programa, va a poder hacer esa extensión de estudios sin ningún problema, pero si deja pasar un tiempo y no está inscrito y hay una brecha, probablemente no vaya a poder hacer esa extensión.
Perfect. Thanks, Laura. So we will sign off now. Gautam had a question about whether he can put his work experience in the gap after 12 standard. Yes, you can. And what does Chinook look for study permit approvals? They look for gaps, they look for age, they look for nationality, they look for travel history, they look for amount of funds, and they look at the level of education and previous refusal. So those are just a few examples. So we're gonna sign off. It's getting late. I gotta go. I have a meeting. Laura's gotta go. Laura, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Reza. Thank you, everyone.
I hope you've enjoyed the video, everyone. We'll be back every Tuesday and Thursday. Remember, we're here every Tuesday, Thursday, helping you out. And then in future sessions, we'll be offering different subjects. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye.